Hello everybody. Today we are going to talk about a trash stock, a company called Mobruk, which operates in the waste management sector. It's a great company that really shines in some aspects, but is it a good investing opportunity right now? Let's dive deep into stock financials, company's prospects and future plans. Mobruk is a leader of industrial waste processing and elimination of so-called ecological bombs. They are able to dispose majority of types of waste that are generated in Poland and outside our country. Their focus is on three different business segments which are complementary to each other. First being incineration of industrial and medical waste, second solidification and stabilization of waste, and then the other production of RDF. RDF stands for refuse derived fuel, and what I really like about this company is it's not only charging for disposal of the waste, but it's also creating value out of the waste and producing products that they later sell. As I mentioned, these three segments are complementary to each other. And for example, in the process of producing RDF, they are using their own energy in form of steam that they get in incineration process. One of the segments that is not included here is elimination of so-called ecological bombs, which are usually very big contracts paid by the government, and it's often very beneficial for them as these wastes are usually harmful and difficult to dispose. Therefore, there is very little competition in this sector. The revenues for two last years are much bigger than revenue for 2020, though 2022 dropped a bit comparing to 2021. This was related to smaller amount of eco-bombs revenues. The revenues from core business grew. In future, however, I expect the numbers from the eco-bombs revenues to grow again, as now they are negotiating contracts for disposal of more of those. The net profit for 2022 dropped a bit. However, I do expect this as well to grow in the future years because in this year they've been heavily investing in new factories and new equipment. Also, energy prices grew a lot in recent time, and this influenced their results negatively. However, from July 2024, the external energy will be replaced with their own energy for production, which will be a huge difference. If we have a look at the business structure and the revenues by segments, we can see that the revenues are well diversified among these three segments, and the other here is mainly for disposing eco bombs, and I think that this will grow in future as well. Already for some time they've been mentioning some acquisitions, none of them took place yet, and this might have a negative impact on investors' sentiment as they were mentioning it for quite a long time, but for me it's rather good information. They are not desperately looking for acquisitions, instead they are looking for good deals. In this report, you can see details of their ongoing investment program. Basically, it seems that they are investing in each of their plants and they will boost the production capacity in all three of the segments. In general, the investment program is worth approximately 210 million zlotys and they plan to end it till the end of 2024. What's important, this should boost the production capacity by 70-18% in the incineration segment and by 65% in the waste solidification and stabilization segment. Apart from that, Mo-BRUK sees a lot of potential in disposal of ecological bombs, which I mentioned before, which have very high margins. They also mention concentrating more in the northern Poland, trying new segments like maritime industry and liquid waste. So, having in mind that in future their production capacity will grow, they will possibly have some acquisitions, they will possibly try new segments, and also the fact that current results might have been affected by ongoing investments and renovations, the future looks really good. Now, the future sounds very promising, but is it a good investing opportunity right now? Well, we can see that in recent years their price just skyrocketed. In 2020, it was traded for around 70-80 zlotys, and currently is traded for around 260 zlotys. Let's have a look at their financials. When it comes to sales revenues, it's been massively growing in the recent years, and net profit was basically following. If we have a look at year-on-year ratio, we can see a small drop in the last year, but in the previous year the growth varied from around 20% to even 50%. I don't expect such big growth every year, but I think that revenues growth around 20% a year on average in the upcoming years is possible. Now having a look at balance sheet, the company assets have been more or less steady in the past. Recently they've been paying off their long-term debts, but they took on some short debt to finance the investing program. In general, they operate on a very small leverage, their net debt is very little, and the net debt to EBITDA is almost close to zero. What I really like about Mobruk is that, in fact, it's a family business, and the main shareholder, Ginger Capital, is a company that belongs to family Mokrzycki, which are the founders and also leading the board. The rest of the shareholders are either pension funds or investment funds. Another great thing about Mobruk is that they operate on very high margins. Basically, the margins vary from 30 to 50%, and they depend on the kind of waste that they are mainly processing at the given time. We can see that in recent quarters the margins have been slightly decreasing, but I hope that in future they will boost again to around 50%, as the company will earn more money on disposal of ecological bombs, which are a great business, have a very high margins. Now, as I'm a dividend investor, what's interesting to me are the dividends. They are in fact a fresh dividend payer, they've paid it only for a few years, and in fact last year they cut the dividend. However, taking all the investments into consideration, I think that was a good move, and in future I expect the dividends to grow significantly. Also, they declare their dividend policy, which assumes that the board will recommend paying the dividend not less than 50% of their net income, given that the net financial debt to EBITDA ratio will be less than 2.5. Current dividend yield is almost 5%, which is very nice, but is it sustainable? Well, it's hard to say because the payout ratio was jumping from around 50% to over 100 and back to 50 in the recent years. So it's hard to prognose what the future will be, but I do believe that dividends will rise quickly in the future. Alright, but is current price a good time to buy Mobruk? Let's see some valuation metrics and indicators. We'll start with price to earnings, and the current price to earnings ratio is around 11, which is quite low, I would say, and current price to book value is more than 5, which is actually quite high. If we have a look at price to earnings from a longer period of time, we can see a downside trend, and actually, though there is a lot of investment undergoing, the current price to earnings is the smallest over a longer period of time. So this might suggest a little undervaluation. Now let's check a few valuation models and see what intrinsic value they show. We'll start with discounted cash flow model for revenue and 5 years. The fair value here is around 342 zlotys, while the current stock price is about 272, so there's a big difference. So from this perspective, the company might be undervalued. Now let's check other models. Let's have a look at earnings power value. Here as well, the fair value is above stock price, though the difference is not that big. And if we have a look at the dividend discount model, the fair value here is significantly higher than the current stock price. Now, if we put these three models together, the DCF model, EPF and DM, we come with intrinsic value more or less about 364 zlotys. Now, what I always do is I apply margin of safety in case that the calculations are bad or too optimistic, and with 20% of margin of safety that I usually prefer, the target price would be around 292 zlotys, which is actually still above the current price. Be informed that Mobruk is already in my portfolio, so I might be biased, but I'm still planning to add more shares around this price. Let me know what you think about this company, about waste management sector in general. Hit that like and subscribe button, write a comment what you like about the video or what should I do better, leave some suggestions for another analysis, and thanks for watching. Remember that I am not a financial advisor nor an economist. The content is strictly educational and informational. You should do your own research and only you are responsible for your own financial choices.